Hi, I'm Congressman Mike Quigley back again. Talk about your most frequently asked questions during the crisis, the pandemic that we're facing now. Uh, Obviously, this is just one way that we're trying to stay in touch with all of you and answer your questions. One of the easiest ways for you to reach us is through our phones. We're in DC 202 225 4061. In the district, we're at 773 267 5926. And you can always reach us at quigley.house.gov. We're doing anything and everything we can to stay in touch with people, from virtual classrooms, remote learning, virtual community meetings, Chamber of Commerce meetings, and even virtual parades if we can. So let us know if you'd like us to come to your community meeting or talk to your group. No group too big, too small, wherever you are in the district, we want to stay in touch. First question comes, is Chicago's home to some of the best restaurants in the world? I'm concerned that some of those businesses, whether they will survive during this pandemic, what's being done to help them? Well, first and foremost, this is a public health crisis creating the economic crisis. It's not the other way around. We have to get that right, or it'll be much longer before we can open. And obviously, people need to act responsibly. But Congress provided $150 billion to address this public health crisis, helping hospitals and caregivers address this issue. A lot of resources devoted to developing treatment and resistance to this disease, cost and containment. The HEROES Act, which we passed just a couple weeks ago, dealt with $75 billion for testing, tracing, and treatment. This must be the focus. Second, between the two bills that passed, Congress has devoted over $670 billion to assisting small businesses. Obviously, restaurants are a large part of that. The HEROES Act that passed the House, not yet the Senate, dealt with a lot of help, providing flexibility, an extension of time for how the money is used and how long the money can be used in that assistance. We want to make sure the systems that were put in place quite quickly work for every single restaurant out there. So on an ongoing basis, I'm talking to restaurateurs and the Chamber of Commerce to talk about their specific needs. And if we'd love to hear from you if there's something else we can do. In the meantime, for my constituents, you can always take out or have delivered your favorite places. For me, it's locally Ann Sather's, Dinkle's Donuts, D'Agostino's, and many other places that you're all so familiar with. So we'll do what we can there. Next question. Passing a budget in Illinois is difficult even in the best of circumstances. What is Congress doing to help make up for the large revenue shortfalls that states are facing across the country? I would add the need for helping not just the states but local governments. The first act only dealt with larger units of government, but the HEROES Act dealt with the small ones in particular. Under the CARES Act, we provided $150 billion to local governments. Just to give you one example of what that meant for our region, a little over $1 billion for PACE Bus, Metra, and the CTA. So we obviously need to continue that as this plays out. We recognize that. You know, I've heard Mitch McConnell say that this is a blue state bailout, recognizing that his home state has needs. Every state will have needs. The virus doesn't recognize Democrat or Republican. It's doing damage from a public health point of view, obviously, and from an economic point of view to our businesses and local governments because of these shortfalls. That's why it's important for Congress to act on a bipartisan basis to help every state, every local government get through this crisis. A related question, our public schools have been hit hard by the virus and are preparing for major budget cuts. What is being done to increase funding for public institutions all the way up through higher education? I've been lucky enough to spend several times a day being part of virtual classrooms or remote learning. It's distressing to hear that there are parts of the country where this isn't available, where kids have to travel to a parking lot and then sit in their car with their parents so they can get connected to the internet. Part of the long-term solution has to be bridging that digital divide. But during my local conversations, I've heard from students and administrators and teachers about what they need to succeed. Toward that end, when we passed the CARES Act, it included $13.5 billion for elementary and secondary education and $14.2 billion for higher education. We recognize that that's not nearly enough. And when we passed the HEROES Act, there was $100 billion for all our educational institutions. The challenge these students are facing, administrators and teachers right now, are enough. We have to provide them with the resources to move forward. Next question. I still haven't received my economic impact payment yet. Is there any way I can reach the IRS to troubleshoot my specific issue? Well, the good news is, to the extent there is, Treasury has delivered more than 140 million economic impact payment stimulus checks worth $239 billion to Americans. But they're still processing and sending out more, so your payment is still on the way. In the meantime, you can visit irs.gov/coronavirus and use the Get My Payment tool, check on your payment. Be aware that they only update this once every 24 hours, so it doesn't really help to check more than once a day. In fact, if you check too many times, it'll block you out of the system as part of their anti-fraud methods. But there are many reasons why you may receive status not available message from this page. If you aren't sure why, the IRS has a frequently asked questions page that should provide an answer. Also, this week, the IRS announced they've added more phone representatives to answer your common questions. That IRS number is 1-800-919-9835. 1-800-919-9835. If you're more comfortable on the phone than the internet, that's the way to go. I feel like the advice has changed a little bit over time. What should I be doing right now to minimize the spread and help reopen our country faster? Science is learning as we go with this, and it's important and it's incumbent upon all of us to act responsibly. I think never in our nation's history have we needed each other more to act responsibly. In other crises, we've needed each other to step up and help. That's the case here, but this is a unique time when we need people to act responsibly. One person's right to do what they want ends at the point where their actions hurt others. So focus on social distancing, staying home when you can, and wearing a mask when you go out. Much of the advice from early on remains the same today. You can help reduce the spread by doing those actions whenever possible. And obviously, if you feel sick, please stay at home. And if you leave your home, wear a mask. Social distance is the term used. I prefer physically distance. I'm encouraging people to stay as close as they can socially. Call your folks and say hello in there. As we begin to reopen, some of these rules will shift. You can follow them by visiting illinois.gov/coronavirus and chicago.gov/coronavirus. Last but not least, the first advice is still the best. Wash your hands, don't touch your face, physically distance if you can. And I know you're not using me to sing here, but I will be seeing you again in all the old familiar places. Stay close, folks, but not too close. God bless.